folks, so welcome back to a video where we discuss distance and midpoint and circles. And if you're interested in distance and midpoint, that's in part 1 of the video for this section. So in this one, I'm just going to talk about circles. But you really do need an understanding of the distance formula before you jump into the circle discussion. So what is a circle? If you had to define to someone who had no idea what a circle is, because, you know, we've known about circles since we were probably 2 years old, how would you define a circle? What would a circle be? When I ask that question in class, I hear a lot of things like it's round. You know, a lot of things are round. How would you define that more specifically? Well, there's really a pretty basic definition of a circle, and it's really all the points that are the same distance from one point. So if you'll look over here to the right, I've got a circle here for you. And if you measure that particular distance, I can't get my pen to draw, right there, okay, it would be the same as that particular distance right there, which would be the same as that particular distance right there. So from the center out, and if you plot every single point that is that exact distance from the center, it would create a circle. If you plotted every single one of them, that you would get a complete circle. So that is the definition of a circle right here. A circle is the set of all points in a plane that are equidistant from a fixed point. That's called the center. The fixed distance from the circle center to any point on the circle is called the radius. And so that's something you know. And you notice that my pen's not working. Let me try that again. You'll notice that they added a little more to the definition. Instead of circle is the set of all points in a plane that are equidistant from a fixed point. What if you did that in space? What if you found all of the points that are equidistant from a center point in space? Well, that would create a sphere, right? That would give you a 3-dimensional circle, which we call a sphere. But in a plane, and just an XY axis, that's going to give you a circle. So we're going to use that idea to build the equation of a circle. All right, so let's label some points. This point right here in the middle, I'm going to call that HK. And you'll find that in math, we use the letters HK often to define a fixed point. And it's used for formulas for parabolas or hyperbolas, in this case, a basic circle. And that's going to be your center. So HK is the center. Now, let's this point out here be XY. And imagine that it's any point on the circle. I just happen to put it over here to the right and up a little bit. You could have put it up at the top or over here to the left or somewhere down here at the bottom. It doesn't matter. So XY is any random point on the circle. Now remember, it says that this XY is a fixed distance from the center. Well, we know all about the distance formula, right? You watched the last video. So the distance formula is D is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. We even developed where that came from. Remember, it's just the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras and his group was awesome, and they came out with this particular theorem, which is just used so frequently in mathematics to find a missing side and of a triangle. But for us, it ended up giving us the distance formula, and we just drew a triangle out of it. Anyway, let's use the distance formula to find this distance. Now, in our picture, remember, we called that the radius, right? So instead of calling it D, distance, we're going to call it R, which is radius. So we're going to plug in for R, and then the equals is still there, and a big square root, right? And we're supposed to subtract our x's. Now let's look at our picture. Our x's are not called x1 and x2, but this one's called x, and this one's called h. Can I use that? Of course I can. So let's say x minus h. And remember, matter of fact, I was going to make that in blue for you because we substituted in. The minus is in the formula, but we changed our x2 and x1 to x and h. And then if I go back to the formula in pink, we subtract our y's and then square it. Let's look at our formula. What are our y's called? Well, that y is called y, and that y is called k. This is going to be y minus k squared. All right, well, watch this trick. Sometimes it's nice not to have square roots in your formula. Now, this is a good equation of a circle, the way we have it listed right here. But to get to the formal standard form of a circle, we get rid of the square root. How do you get rid of a square root? You square both sides. So we're going to square this side of the equation, and we're going to square this side of the equation. And that's going to give us our final equation of a circle. So here it goes, r squared equals, now this square root and this square cancel each other out. That's going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. And that is our standard form of a circle. And I have it typed up nicely on the next page. So here we go. The standard form of the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And if I go back and label the stuff in the circle, remember right here in the middle, the center is called hk. xy is any point on the circle, and then r is the distance from the center to any point on the circle. Now we need to be able to use that, and there's several types of problems that come from this. So let's take a look at one of our examples. So for our first problem in this video, write the equation of the circle. And I'll give you a circle over here to the right. So let's just say our center is 5, 6. So from that information that we know, our HK is 5, 6. Okay. What else do we know? Well, we know our R is 4. Do we need anything else? No, we don't. If you'll notice over here, real tiny, top right, I have the equation of the circle for you. To put a circle in standard form, all you need is the center, which is HK, and the radius, which is R. The X and Y part of the formula just stays there, so that way you have an equation. So if I go back and I fill in that information, I have X minus 5 squared plus Y minus 6 squared is equal to, and then it says R squared, so 4 to the second power. Now you do want to simplify this. What you don't have to do is multiply this out though. X minus 5 times X minus 5 and FOIL it out. You do not have to do that. If it asks for standard form, you're already in the right place. Where you have the center, you can see right there, but you do need to square the 4. So 4 times 4 gives me 16. And this equation is in standard form. So when they say write the equation of a circle, this is good. Right there. That's all you have to do. Let's try another one. Now, why don't you go ahead and pause the video and work this problem out and see what you get. Write the standard form of the equation of the circle with the given center and radius. So just like the last problem, but I'll give you a negative number this time. All right, so my suggestion is every time you're asked to use a formula, go ahead and write out the formula. So you have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And remember, the only thing you have to plug in for is h and k and r. You want to leave the x and the y in your equation, so when you finish, you have the equation of a circle. Now, what is my h and k? Well, h is negative 3 and k is 5. And of course, it says r is 3 right there. That's your radius. So I have x minus a negative 3 squared plus y minus 5 squared is equal to 3 squared. Now, what are you supposed to do to simplify? We already talked about you need to square the 3 to get 9. But also, whenever you have the two negatives in here like that, don't leave it like that. You need to go ahead and say that's plus. Now, past that, you don't have to do anything else. So this will be x plus 3 squared plus y minus 5 squared is equal to 9. And that is standard form for the equation of a circle. Now, there's something I want to point out. You're going to need to be able to do this in reverse also. Like if they give you this equation, if you'll notice, because the formula has minuses, you will see that the center, you change the signs. Okay, so if it's plus 3, your x value is negative 3. If it's negative 5, your y value is positive 5. And then r is always going to be the square root of this number. which is 3. Now, we knew that because they gave us that, but I'm just going from here backwards to show you that skill, because you're going to need that skill in problems coming up in just a few minutes. So you should be able to be given the center and the radius and write the equation. You should be able to be given the equation and then go back and write the center and radius. So let's try another problem. So again, my best advice is to pause it. You work this problem out real quick, fast forward it, see if you got it right, and then move on to the next. If you're completely confused, watch me do it, okay? So it says write the standard form of the equation of the circle with the given center and radius. So once again, when I'm going to write out the formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And I'm only substituting in for h, k, and r. And I'm simplifying just a little bit if necessary, okay? So what is my h? Well, my h is -5 and my k is -3. So I have x minus a -5 squared plus y minus a -3 squared, and that equals the square root of 5 squared. Now what do I do? Well, because I have these two negatives, that's going to turn positive. I have it again here. That's going to turn positive. What else is going to happen? This square root and this square are going to cancel each other out. So let's write that out. So I've got x plus 5 squared plus, now these two negatives also turn positive, y plus 3 squared equals, again, the square root and the square cancel each other out to get 5 is my r squared at the end. This is in standard form for the equation of the circle. We're finished with this problem. Now again, let's point out that backwards trick. If you were given this equation and you were asked to find the center, remember you change the signs. Plus 5 means the center for h is -5, the k value is -3. Why do we change the signs? Because the formula has a minus in it. And then your r is always the square root of this number. And then you could go back and check yourself and look, that's exactly the information they gave us. So this is just a way to check your work, but it's also a skill required because there are problems that give you the equation and you have to find the center and the radius. Now it's time to discuss something new. Still dealing with the circle, but notice this thing. It says the general form of the equation of a circle is x squared plus y squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0. It's a lot going on there. Now, the way we had it, if you look at top right, there's our regular equation of the circle. There were no x and y's by themselves. They were inside the square. What's happened here is they've taken this equation and multiplied it all out. And so you see what I mean? Let's do that for our last problem, right? So let's go back to our answer for the last problem that we did. Right there, x plus 5 squared plus y plus 3 squared is equal to 5. Remember, that was our answer. And let's write that down and see if we can't get it in this general form, okay? So I have x plus 5 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 5. Remember, I just copied it from the last problem we did. Now, if I'm going to convert that to general form, I have to multiply all this out. X plus 5 times x plus 5 plus, and I also have to do y plus 3 times y plus 3, and then equals 5. We'll handle that in a minute. But let's FOIL. Wow. X times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times 5 is 25. Phew. Now let's do that for our y's. Y times y is y squared. Y times 3 is 3y. 3 times y is another 3y. 3 times 3 is 9 equals 5. Now I'm going to go through and do things like add like terms and try to write it in this order. Notice it's got an x squared and y squared first. Look, there it is. There's an x squared there, and then way down here is y squared. So it's x squared plus y squared. Okay, and then it listed the x's next. Look, 5x plus 5x, and there's no other x's, so that's 10x. And then it listed the y's next. So where are they? 3y plus 3y is going to be 6y. Now let's cross through what we've already used. I've written down x squared, I've written down y squared, I've written down 5x plus 5x is 10x, and 3y plus 3y is 6y. I still got some numbers I got to deal with, don't I? So I've got 25 plus 9 is 34 equals 5. But notice it's equal to 0, so I need to subtract 5 from both sides. And here's general form. When I finish this, this is x squared plus y squared plus 10x plus 6y plus 29 equals 0. Now here's the problem with this. It's very hard to look at that and recognize that that's a circle. When it was in its other form, when it's like this, whenever you see, a square for the x's, a square for the y's, a number on the other side, that's most likely a circle, especially if you have a plus in between them. That part is required, and you have to have a 1x and a 1y. Then you know you have a circle. But if it's all multiplied out like this, it's hard to recognize that that's a circle. Now, the skill that we just did by foiling and adding like terms and all that, you're really not going to be going from this form to the form we just did. You're going to be going the other way, y'all. You're going to be given what I have over here circled on the right. You're going to be given that and have to get back to standard form. And so that requires a few skills. It's not as simple as just unmultiplying. It sort of is. But we need a skill to get from this x squared plus y squared plus 10x plus 6y plus 29 to get back to this factored form that we have going on right here. So this brings me to another type of problem. So we're going to leave the problem we just did behind just for a minute, and we'll talk about that general form for a circle in just a minute. But notice there's a skill we need to complete the square on. And I see that I have a typo here. This says x squared equals bx. It's supposed to be x squared plus bx. To complete the square on x squared plus bx, it says take half the coefficient of the x, then square this number. It says by adding the square of half the coefficient of x, a perfect square trinomial will result. So let's see if we can do that for this problem. So first of all, take half the coefficient of the x. What is the coefficient of x? Well, that's 6. So here's what they want me to do. They want me to take half of 6. What, y'all, what's half of 6? 3, right? Then they want me to square this number. Then you square 3. Y'all, what's 3 squared? 9. Now, what do I do with that number? It says by adding the square of half the coefficient of x, a perfect square trinomial will result. So what they want us to do is add 9 to this polynomial. Now, here's the deal, y'all. If you're given a polynomial, you're not really allowed to just add 9 to it or add some random number to it. You would have to subtract 9 to keep it balanced. If you add 9, you have to subtract 9. Or if it were in equation form, you'd have to add 9 to the other side. Yet there are homework problems like this that ask you just to complete the square. And we did. All we have to do is take half of 6 and square it and add that number. The next thing they want you to do is factor this thing. Now watch out. I need a number that multiplies to be 9 and adds to be 6. What numbers do that? Well, 3 and 3, right? So this factors into x plus 3 times x plus 3. Now another way to write that, and the way you should write it, is x plus 3 squared. So we completed the square. Your goal is to attempt to write this binomial as a perfect square, and this is a perfect square, x plus 3 times x plus 3. Now these are not equivalent. X squared plus 6x is not equal to x plus 3 squared because we added 9 to it, but this is a homework skill. Now how does it relate? Well, look, we've written it kind of like this x minus h squared. We've written it in that form. Now you might be thinking, yours has a plus and that has a minus. Remember, we just changed the sign to handle the minus part of it. So let's try another one like this, and then we'll do big picture. We'll show you how this applies to a circle. So here's another one. And this one's not quite as clean. We're supposed to complete the square for the polynomial, then factor. Okay, so I'm supposed to take half of the x coefficient, which is -5, right? You can't take half of -5, can you? Well, yeah, you can. It's a fraction. So any number that's here, to take half of it, just put it over 2. If it comes out to be a nice whole number, good for you. That's like the last question we did. If it doesn't come out to be a nice whole number and it's a fraction, that's okay. So you're supposed to take half of that number, and then you're supposed to square it. So -5/2 squared is positive 25/4. So that's what I'm supposed to add to this thing. Minus 5x plus 25/4. So we completed the square. But then it says we're supposed to factor the trinomial that we come up with. Now the last problem when we factored, we found numbers that multiply to be 25/4 and add to be -5. Well, that's not as easy this time. Look at the last one though. Let me go back a page. Look, multiplies to be 9, adds to be 6. That's 3. But there's something else I want to point out to you. That 3 also showed up right here. It's the half number. Okay, so that's the number that goes right there. Always the half number. So if I go back to the problem we just did, what was the half number? That guy right there, right? So when I factor this, it's going to be x minus 5/2 squared. Okay, so it's the half number that goes right there. Think you can do this? Yeah, you can do this. No problem. Now, how does that apply to what we're doing? Let's take a look. Okay, so this is steps to convert a circle from general form, remember that's the all multiplied out form, to standard form. So you're going to want to keep these directions nearby. We're going to group the x terms together and the y terms together. We're going to do that first. Then we're going to take half of the x coefficient and square this value. Then we're going to do the same thing to y. Now, that should be familiar. That's exactly what we did to complete the square in the last two problems. Then we're going to add the values from step 2 within the grouped x and y values and on the other side of the equation. Remember how I told you you're not really allowed to add a number and that you would have to balance it somehow? That's the balance step, step 3. Then the last step is the factor step, which we did for the last problem. So let me show you this in action. When you do it a couple of times, it actually gets real easy. So don't stress over this, just follow along. So here's our first problem. We're going to write the equation of the circle in standard form. So remember, step 1, we're going to group our x's and y's. So notice it's all over the place. Look, I've got an x squared and an 8x. Let's group those together. So I'm going to say x squared plus 8x. I'm going to do that in purple. And then let's group our y's together. Okay, so that's going to be plus y squared plus 4y. So those are together. And then there's an equals just randomly in the problem. Now, look, I have this 16 right here. I'm going to take it to the other side and put negative 16 over there. So you see what I've done? I've done step 1. I've grouped the x's together, and I've grouped the y's together. Now, I didn't say anything in these directions about the 16, but we need to move it to the other side for now. Okay? So go ahead and move the 16 over. It's always going to take whatever sign that is and change it when you move it to the other side. Now let's move on to step 2. I'm supposed to take the half of the x coefficient and square it. So if I take, all this work is going to be in purple. So take half of 8, which is 4, and then square it. So 4 squared is 16. Okay, then I'm supposed to, let's work on just x's. Step 3 says add the value from step 2 within the grouped x's and on the other side. So watch this. This is going to be x squared plus 8x plus 16. Now I have the equals and negative 16 over here, and I'm going to be adding that 16. Why can I do that? Because if I add 16 to the left of the equation, I need to add it to the right. You follow that? So we did the same thing a minute ago. We took half of the 8, squared it. I added it to my x squared plus 8x, but I also added it to the other side of the equation. Now I'm going to switch to blue on you, and we're going to do the same exact thing for the y values. So I'm going to take half of 4, right? Half of 4 is 2, and then I'm going to square 2 to get 4. Now what am I going to do with that 4? I'm going to write it at the end of y squared plus 4y, but I'm also going to add it to the other side of the equation. because you can't just add 4 to the left. You have to add it to the right also if it's in equation form. And now we have an equivalent statement. This long line down here of all these colors is actually equivalent to our first typed up line above, because everything we added to the left, we also added to the right. Now my next step is the factor step. All right, so remember, we're going to factor x squared plus 8x plus 16. Remember, it factors into the half number. What's the half number? 4. So this is going to factor into x plus 4 with the square on the outside. And then the blue one, the same thing is going to happen. It's going to factor in the half number. What was the half number? 2. So that's going to be y plus 2 with the square on the outside. And then the equals. And then you say negative 16 plus 16 is 0. Plus 4 is 4. And this last line is in standard form of a circle. Okay. Notice one more thing. I'm going to squeeze it in over here on the right. I'm going to write it in black so you can see it. But we were supposed to find the center and the radius. So remember, the center, when it's written like this, you can't tell what it is. When it's written in the highlighted yellow at the bottom, remember the center, the h value, you change the sign. If it says plus 4, then it's going to be minus 4 for the h value. If it says plus 2, it's going to be minus 2 for the k value. And then the r is always the square root of your r squared. So square root of 4, which is 2. So my radius is 2, and my center is negative 4, negative 2. You think you can do this? I've got more. Let's try another problem. Okay, so once again, we have an equation in general form. This is a circle, but it's hard to tell it's a circle because of the way it's written. Now, what gives it away that it's probably a circle is the 1x squared plus the 1y squared. Everything else, we just have to put it in general form, standard form to find out. So remember, the trick is we're going to group all our x's together. So x squared plus 12x. We do that in purple. Then I'm going to group my y's together. So that's going to be plus y squared minus 6y. But then we've got this random 4, right? And I'm going to put just equals, try to do this in a different color. Maybe black this time. Just put equals. Now if I move that to the other side, it's going to be a positive 4. I'm going to go back to purple to work just on my x's. Remember, we're supposed to take half of 12. So that's 12 over 2, which is 6, and then square it. So 6 squared is 36. So I have x squared plus 12x plus 36. Now, y'all, if I add 36, I have to add 36 on the other side too. So there's already a 4 over there, but now I've got to add 36 over there. So this 36 and this 36 keeps it balanced. Again, what did I do? I took half of 12, which was 6, and then I squared it, which was 36, and that goes on both sides. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the blue, which is my y values. I'm going to take half of negative 6, put it over 2, that's negative 3, and then negative 3 squared is 9, right? So I have plus y squared minus 6y plus 9. Now if I add 9 over here, I'm also required to add 9 over there. You follow this? So I'm doing the same thing for x and y, it's just different numbers. Now it's time to factor, and you always factor into the half number. The half number was 6. So that's going to be x plus 6 squared. And then I'm going to factor my y's. It always factors in the half number. The half number is negative 3. So y minus 3 squared. And then on the other side, I have 4 plus 6, 36 is 40, right? And then 40 plus 9 is 49. This is standard form for the equation of a circle. But a couple of extra questions here. They want us to find the center and the radius, and they want us to graph it. So the center is going to be negative 6, 3, right? You change the sign for the x and make it negative 6. You change the negative 3 and make it positive 3. And the radius is the square root of 49. You always take the square root of that, which is 7. Now, what do I do? Okay, I need to plot first the center. So when you go to graph a circle, plot your center first. So I'm going over to negative 6, 3. So negative 6, 3. Now let me go ahead and tell you what I've done wrong with this problem. I didn't give you an X, or myself, a big enough XY axis to pull this off like I should. But we're still going to do it. Okay, I'm not going to stop the whole video just to handle that. Notice the radius is 7. So you count to 7 in the left, right, and up, down directions from the center. So if I count 7, don't count where you are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So that's the edge of my circle. And then I go down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's down there at -4. Yep. Then I go up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's up there at 11. Makes sense. 3 plus, oh, at 10, isn't it? 10 is the line that's missing, by the way. Okay, 9 is the line that's there, so that's at 10. Here's where I led you wrong. I can't go left 7, right? So I'm just going to have to count. So this is at -6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now if I go left, and I'm gonna type this in pink. If I go left 7 units from -6, that's going to be -13, 3. And I told myself I was doing that in pink, and I wasn't. But that's the point, -13, 3 over there. Then after that, you do your very best to make a circle out of that. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but you can do it. And if you connect the dots kind of in quadrants in your quarter parts of a circle, it works a little better. It doesn't look quite as footballish. But as long as you're close, I'm happy. And then when you do it in homework, online homework, you have a circle tool you can use. So it works out great. Let's try another one of these. You want to? Now the real way to tell if you know what you're doing here is to pause it and attempt this on your own. Although this one's a little different, but the same ideas hold true. So pause it. See if you can't do what we did for the last problems to pull this one off. Okay, hopefully you're back and you did it. So we're supposed to group together the x's, group together the y's, move any term that's just a number to the other side. Let's try that first, okay? So I've got x squared. Okay, and looking for another x, you know, I don't see one. Is that okay? Turns out it is. Plus y squared minus 6y. This -7, I'm going to move to the other side and make it +7. Now, I was doing this in colors earlier, but maybe you don't have a lot of colors. So there we go. There's our x's. There's our y's, right? So I'm supposed to take the half of the x coefficient squared. I don't have an x coefficient. But that's okay. If you don't have an x coefficient, leave that alone for now. I'm going to show you what's going on if you don't already see it. This one, though, does have an x coefficient, right? And so in pink, I'm going to take half of -6, right? And I'm double writing this. If I say half of -6, that is what this whole operation is. So I'm really saying it twice by putting the 2 down here and writing it. Half of -6 is -3. Then I'm supposed to square -3 and get 9. What am I supposed to do with that 9? I'm supposed to add it on both sides. Just like that, right? I added 9 over here and I added 9 over here to keep it balanced. So here we go. I'm going to come down below, change it back to blue, and write what we have. So we have x squared plus y squared minus 6y plus 9 equals 7 plus 9 is 16. We can go ahead and do that. Now here's all our y stuff, and here's our x stuff. Now if I write that in standard form, notice how I'm not subtracting anything from the x. You know what I could do? I could write that as x minus 0 squared. That's totally okay. This guy, there's a plus in the middle, by the way. This guy I'm going to write as y minus 3 squared. Why am I doing that? Because remember, it's your half number that goes right here when it's factored. Or you can imagine what multiplies to be 9 and adds to be -6. That's also -3 equals 16. Now from there, we can easily tell our center. Remember, our HK value is going to be 0, 3. 0 from here, remember that was that extra thing we kind of had to pull out because we weren't subtracting or adding anything to the x's. And then here, you always change the sign because the formula has a minus in it. So my k is +3, And my r is the square root of whatever you have on the other side, which is 16. And that gives me my r is 4. So my center is 0, 3, and my r is 4. When I go plot that and graph it, I go to 0, 3 first. So that's right here. That's my center. And then I count out 4 in each direction. So left, right, up, and down. You can't count 4 in a diagonal because the diagonal is not 1 unit long. It's longer. Okay? So count to the right 4. Don't count where you are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That takes us to 7. Count left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That takes us to negative 4. And then count down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That takes us to negative 1. And then just do the best you can if you're doing this on paper to sketch out a circular shape. Again, when you do that homework, you'll have a circle tool that'll pop out a perfect circle for you every time. So sometimes they aren't quite as much fun because you have fractions to deal with, but I need you to know how to do those just like I need you to know how to do the nice whole number ones. So here we go. Group your x's together. Notice I've got an x squared and an x right here and here. So x squared plus x. Group your y's together. So that's y squared plus y. And then this constant dude goes to the other side. So that equals positive 1/2 when I moved them over. So these are my x's, these are my y's, and then my numbers on the other side. So I'm supposed to take half of 1. Look, my x coefficient is 1. So half of 1 is 1/2. And then I'm supposed to square that number, right? So I put parentheses around it and square it. That gives me 1/4. So I'm going to add 1/4 in right next to my x value and on the other side too. Okay, now in a different color because it does make things a little more clear sometimes, I'm going to take half of my x coefficient. Y'all, that's a 1/2 again. My x coefficient is 1 right here, but when I take half of it, it's 1/2. Then I got to square it and I get 1/4. So once again, I'm going y squared plus 1y, which is y, plus 1/4, and I have to add 1/4 to the other side as well. And that's to keep all of it balanced. Whatever you do to the left, you have to do the right. Now I'm going to factor, right? So I'm going to factor my purple, which is my x values. It's going to be x plus, that was supposed to be purple, but it's not, I'm sorry. Remember, it's the half number, not 1/4, but the half number is the 1/2. So 1/2 squared. Now I'm going to work with my y's. It's the same thing. It's going to be y plus my half number, and then squared. Really, it's y, whatever sign this is. So if your half number was a positive 1/2, you put plus 1/2. If your half number was a negative 1/2 because your y coefficient was negative, it would be a negative 1/2. And now over here, I'm supposed to add these together. Now, there's a little work involved there. We know 1/4 plus 1/4 we can add together to get 2/4 because there's a common denominator. But you know what? This 2 is not what we need. We need to find a common denominator by multiplying 2 over 2 right here. And so when I list this out, let's go back to purple, that's going to be 2/4. It didn't go back to purple, my bad, plus 1/4 plus 1/4. What does that give me? Well, that's 4/4. Hey, that's cool, right? Which is just 1. And over here I have x plus 1/2 squared plus y plus 1/2 squared. All right, so, and that's equal to 1. So there's my equation. Now I'm going to highlight what you would actually type in. You would type in this. You're not going to type in the 4/4. You're just going to type the 1 in. Now, we're supposed to write our center and radius from that. So remember, your center is you change the signs. So it's going to be negative 1/2. Change that sign also. The y is going to be negative 1/2. And my radius is the square root of that number right there, which happens to be 1. So in pink, I'm going to do the best I can to plot this circle. So I go over to negative 1/2, negative 1/2. So that is hard to see, but it's right there in the upper part of my 0. And then I count out 1 in every direction. So if I'm over here at negative 1/2, there's 1. I go up 1, I go left 1, and I go down 1. And that is this cute, tiny little circle right there. Okay? You got this. Let's try one more strange problem that might show up in the homework, and we will call this section done. Okay, our last problem is a little unusual. So we have this picture over here on the right, and you'll see a circle graphed inside the XY axis. It has points labeled for us. That's helpful. It says find the center of the circle from that information. Then it wants us to find the radius of the circle, and then use the center and radius to write it in standard form. And remember, that part's easy. If we know what the center and radius is, we just plug into the formula, right? We're trying to use the formula x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. But you know what? If you don't have an h and a k and an r, you can't do that. And so that's why they broke it down for us. How can we find the center? So the center, right here, right there in the middle, goes right through that line. Now, really in these directions, my center disappeared. It tells us that that line goes right through the middle of the circle. You kind of have to be told that. But I left off the directions, but really it does. It goes right through the center of the circle. So you know what that is? That's the midpoint, y'all. If I could find the midpoint of that circle, then, or the midpoint of that line, that would give us the center of that circle. So remember the midpoint formula? To find midpoint, you average the x's. So we take the average of the x's and the average of the y's. This is from the first video. Just like that. Okay? So let's average the x's. When you average the x's, you add 3 plus 5 and divide by 2. Remember, an average, you just add them together and divide by how many you have. The average of the y's, you do 6 plus 4 and divide it by 2. Want to simplify that, 3 plus 5 is 8, 8 divided by 2 is 4, 6 plus 4 is 10, divided by 2 is 5, right? That is my HK value. That is the center of the circle. Now, how am I going to find the radius? Now I know the center is right there, is at 4, 5. How am I going to find out the radius? Well, the radius is how far is it from the center to the edge? Well, how about that fancy distance formula we know, right? So I do d equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, right? That's that's going to give us our radius, which we're calling d because we're using the distance formula. Now, what points are we using though? Well, it's up to you. You can use 3, 6, and 4, 5, or you can use 4, 5, and 5, 4. Because you're finding the distance from either the center down or the center up. I'm going to use 3, 6, and 4, 5 just to avoid the confusion of the 4, 5 and the 5, 4. Okay, so x2 minus x1, that's 4 minus 3, right? I'm just subtracting my x's. Plus y2 minus y1, that's going to be 5 minus 6. Don't forget to square it. So distance is equal to 4 minus 3 squared is 1 squared, plus 5 minus 6 squared is another 1 squared. That equals to 1 plus 1, which gives me the square root of 2. So my distance is the square root of 2, which is my r, because remember that's all we were trying to do is find the distance between 4, 5 and 3, 6, and that distance right there that I've got in pink now is square root of 2. Finally, we're able to use our formula. I have an h, I have a k, I have an r. We're ready to plug right in. Let's do that in purple. Okay, so I'm going to say this is x minus, what's my h? Remember that's 4 right above us, squared, plus y minus, what's my k? That's 5 squared, equals r, which is not pretty, square root of 2. Remember, don't forget, you got to square it because it says r squared. And then you simplify. There's no need to multiply this out. You'll never need to do that. But the square root of 2 squared is just 2. And this is my final answer. I love this problem. Why? Because it uses everything we learned in this section. The midpoint, the distance formula, and the equation of a circle. The only thing we didn't do is complete the square to put it in standard form because it gives us standard form in the process we used. I hope this helps. If you have any questions about circles or midpoint or radius, please let me know. Hope you have a lovely day.